So let's get started. We're going to have a look at the film The Prophecy today, starring Christopher Walken. Now this is it's a difficult film to describe, to be honest with you. It's I guess you would call it a psychological horror film, but with supernatural elements. It's very it's a difficult film to really describe. Now it's not all that horrific, and it's not all that scary, but it does, I would say, fit into those categories more than anything else. Essentially, it follows a war between, or a second war between, the angels of heaven, and essentially they kind of split into two factions, and they end up, well, some of them end up coming to Earth, and the aim is that they want to find the soul of the most evil man on Earth, the evil soldier that has been on Earth, and essentially that will tip the balance of power to either side of the forces. The bad guys, if you like, are led by Archangel Gabriel, which is played by Christopher Walken, and there's the other side. There's an angel called Simon, played by Eric Stoltz, but it's not. He's only in the first part of the movie. Essentially, the second sort of bunch of characters are human, and they end up being the main protagonists of the film. So essentially, it's a sort of an ex-priest who is now working as a policeman, and a school teacher who essentially are trying to hide the soul. Although they don't realise quite what it is initially. The soul has actually been put by Simon, who is the good angel, if you like, into the body of a young girl at the school where the woman teaches. So it's a story of Gabriel trying to find the girl and then essentially extract it. And it sounds it's more of a, I guess it's a chase film in a weird way. Now I really like it, but it certainly isn't for everyone. It's quite heavy going, and there's obviously quite a lot of religious themes in it. Now I find it quite interesting. I'm not a religious person myself, but I do find it interesting, and they've certainly done their research, and it's fascinating, the way the angels really look down on the humans, essentially, for taking God's love, if you like, and that's essentially why they're fighting. Now, the real centerpiece of this is Christopher Walken as Gabriel, who I have to say is absolutely fantastic. It's one of his, I think, one of his most memorable performances, and he actually starred in two sequels, which were, I would argue, less good. Now, the main sort of hero is a guy, Elias Castillas, I think his name is. He was in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Katie Jones, if you're into that sort of film, and it's essentially that the main interplay between him, Christopher Walken, and the main female lead, played by Virginia Madsen. As I say, there's not all that much gore in it. There are a few scenes, but they're very, very quick, and there's not much action in it. It's much more psychological, and kind of the threat and the menace behind it. And Christopher Walken's performance really is fantastic. So it's kind of a slow moving film, but it's certainly one I think that you enjoy on a sort of intellectual level, even though it's a sort of a fantasy film essentially. I guess the budget does show a little bit in some places, because there are a few effects where you kind of see the angels in sort of makeup, and I don't think they've aged all that well. They kind of look a bit too prosthetic, I think, but it's effective at the time, I would say. So you can kind of forgive that. I would say that you have to kind of look at the film as not the same way as you would look at a 100 million blockbuster, because it's just not, you can't really compare them. But it's a fun film. If you're into that sort of genre of more of a thoughtful, heavy going kind of stuff. But to me, it's the performances, especially of Christopher Walken. But I really like Eric Stoltz in it as well. And Christopher Walken's got a kind of minion who's this sort of suicidal bloke who he's brought back from the dead, and he's kind of quite fun as well. And there's a surprise cameo at the end by now forgive me if I'm pronouncing his name wrong, Viggo Mortensen, basically Aragorn from the Lord of the Rings trilogy. He actually plays Lucifer. And so he's not in it very much, but it's when he is in it, he again he's a scene stealer, absolutely brilliant. So certainly not for everyone. If you do like kind of slow moving films, I would definitely recommend it. It may be a little bit boring, I think, for the more casual moviegoer. So it's going to one. I've watched it with a couple of people who are like that, and they weren't all that fussed. So in that respect, I'd probably give it, I would say, a 7 out of 10. Cheers.